My name's Reid Purvis.
My name's Gino Barletta.
Fantastic, and we're here to talk to you about Azure.
Financial management, reporting, and subscription hygiene through Power BI.
So how many people, just kind of curious, are responsible for the financial kind of how much you spend in Azure in your companies? Awesome, great.
Great show of hands.
Which is one. I know you are. You guys are as well. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is feature-packed. We're going to cover a lot of things, and obviously the reason you're here today is to understand a little bit more about what your billing is, how to get some real tangible data out of your subscription, and more importantly, probably understand a little bit more about your subscription, and hopefully you can get some tips and tricks that walk away with things that you can do better. Okay, I'm not saying they're not better, but things you can do. So we are going to talk about how to get started, and started within Azure. I know most of the people in the room put up their hand, which is fantastic, you have Azure, but we're just going to set some context of namings and conventions because they will become very important as we start deep diving into the components and how they interrelate. The second thing we're going to talk about is exactly what comprises an Azure subscription and an enrollment and a department and a group and some other bits and pieces. And of course, we're going to talk about how to manage this beast. So, and of course, some tips and tricks. So, why is this important? So, for those people that don't know me, my name is Gino Barletta. I'm a principal consultant for a company called Andium, which stands for Analysis, Design, Implementation. And basically what I do is I work with customers like yourselves, but with a digital transformation focus. And what that really means is saying, of all your assets and investments that you have, what's important and how do we move forward so you can become agile? End of sales speech. So, very fortunate today to co-present with
Reid Purvis, Azure Technical Specialist. I guess part of the reason many of you know me is I've had a lot of conversations with some of the people in this room, but many, many other customers that say, hey, we've gone through, we've deployed a virtual machine, we've done some stuff, and then they think, oh man, we've got to go back and figure out what this is costing us, you know, how to report on it, how much do we manage that stuff. And so there's a cyclical kind of process about understanding how to do something technical and then figuring out what it costs you and then controlling that cost and then doing that over and over again. And so hopefully this will give you some ideas about that process and how you can view that.
So as a consultant, one of the things I see time and time again is, Gino, why didn't you come to us 12 months ago and tell us this? We would be in a better position of where we are today. So hopefully everyone in the room today will get this fantastic stuff. So what we're going to talk about, so this is the getting started slide. I'll stand out of the way for people to read it. So we're going to talk about the anatomy of an Azure subscription. We're going to talk about this thing called boundary of separation. No spoiler alert here. We're going to talk about what a direct subscription and what a trial subscription and a pay as you go. For people in the room that have an enterprise agreement, we're going to talk specifically about what you have and what that means to you. For those people that have MSDN subscriptions and benefits, there's some cool stuff that you may not know. We're going to show you how to turn that on. And of course, we're going to talk about Azure offers and Azure account types. So, feature packed, let's get into it. So, what is an Azure subscription? Fundamentally, it's a boundary of separation of one customer to another. As you can appreciate, Microsoft being a multi-tenanted cloud-based public platform needs to make sure that your data doesn't interact with your data and runs in such a way that you have not only control, the keys of the kingdom, but the ability to delegate that control, and obviously from an Azure usage point of view, what's it actually costing you? So, looking at the billing relationship that you have. So, when you first started creating a subscription, you probably went to the azure.com, plugged in a credit card and got a trial up and running, right? Quick show of hands, who actually started that way? Yeah, just a few hands, right? So, one of the things that you find that is really quick and really easy to get up and going, and we're going to go a little bit behind the scenes in a moment and show you what that actually looks like. So as you can appreciate, once you do that, you then go, great, I'm now the account owner and the account administrator. I now need to give Reid access, but he's a developer. And there's nothing wrong against developers, but my fundamental problem is I don't want to give him keys to the kingdom, right? I don't want him to mess my beautiful Azure subscription. I want to make sure that he can do only a subset of things, but not restrict him in provisioning resources that he needs to do to get his job done, right? So does that resonate with people in the room? Okay, so obviously we need to, one of the native features within Azure subscription is role-based access control, RBAC. Who here wants to do RBAC? Show of hands. Show in the room. Who has implemented RBAC? Most of the people in the room. And of course, understanding boundaries. So what we need to talk about within boundaries is usage and billing. Now, throughout this entire conversation, we're going to flip between technical and administrative billing. Now, we need to do that because of the simple context of what Azure is, and this will make sense in a moment, right? I apologize in advance if I sound like I'm going to repeat myself. So we're also going to talk about the technical limits, virtual networking at a very high level, and some policies. Policies that you can define and enforce to make your life easier for boundaries, billing, subscriptions, and resourcing. Okay, and of course, the last thing is how do we leverage this fantastic resource of Azure Public Cloud to your existing on-premise Active Directory? Now, I'm sure everyone, and hopefully everyone, has already connected that in some way, shape, or form, right? Whether it's federated or synced or that type of stuff. Now, there's a few things that we need to be aware of going forward, and we'll cover that in a moment. So a quick show of hands here. Who here works for a managed service provider? Right, so you obviously know the term CSP, Cloud Solution, right? Who here has purchased directly from Microsoft? Pretty much the other half of the room. So, if you purchase directly from Microsoft, what that entails you to do enables you, because you own the subscription, you basically manage the subscription on your own terms and own things. And part of that, the other way to purchase, as I've already touched on, is as a cloud solution provider. In other words, a managed service provider. Now, we will talk a little bit about this, and what that really means is as a managed service provider, you're managing your own Azure subscription and have the capability to provision and delegate administration to your customers' Azure subscriptions, and we'll touch on that. Now, if you're purchasing directly from Microsoft, you either go directly, pay as you go, aka credit card, or you have an enterprise agreement. So who here in the room has an enterprise agreement? Most of the people in the room. Fantastic. All right. So, as you can appreciate, for the very first time you go to azure.com and click on the I want to sign up, we've all seen this, yes? Right? If everyone nods, then I can go forward. Everyone's nodding, yes? Fantastic, right. So, number of options, and the link at the bottom of this is how to get some more information about the types of offers. Right, so moving forward, who here has MSDN entitlements? Most of the people in the room, fantastic. Who here is leveraging MSDN entitlements? Great. Did you know that it is now $260 a month? Not $200 of free entitlement to run. Yeah, exactly, right? I'm not quite sure when it increased from 200, but so the purpose of this is to mention that
you can show
the link, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. The link here is how to go and turn on your MSDN subscription benefits within your Azure subscription. We will show you through our demo where to go and where to tick the box.
Yeah, I mean, sorry? No, so a couple of things on the MSDN actual credits or components is that, first of all, they're an individual mandate. So it's not like you can share them across developers. MSDN is a per-user model. Yeah. Number two, what we see is a lot of enterprise accounts where they have MSDN for a number of their developers or IT staff, and that's a great benefit because it avoids a lot of licensing. But they don't turn this on. So first of all, if you have developers or enterprise people or people with MSDN subscriptions, please go turn this on. I mean, you're just wasting opportunities there, right? It's great for training. It's great for having to do that. So there's the link. It'll be in the slides. go and turn it on. You know, might as well. Otherwise, you're just not taking advantage of them. And then number two, you know, as you're going through in their training, then what you can do is you can have those people then also have capability in your enterprise subscriptions. Yeah, so that's kind of where that is. You can't unfortunately you cannot pool your MSDN subscription.
You'd be surprised the amount of times that I get customers saying, "Oh, we have an MSDN subscription over
Can
here.
we kind of pool them all together?
Can we pull
and
them
then
all together?" It's
No.
like, no, unfortunately.
Yeah. But it's great for test and dev, great for playing around.
Perfect. You know, hackathons, the amount of times I've helped customers where it's like, real example, a manufacturing company, 7 locations across Australia, said, "We're working with this organization that want to build, test, and prototype something, business solution, of applications. What should we do?" And I go, "Cool. Go into your Azure subscription, delegate them permissions, and then they can do whatever it is they need to do." Bit of a spoiler alert for that, sorry. So, quick read of the slide. We've covered all of this. Just a summary. We're now going to move forward and change gears. So, now that we have a good understanding of the types of things that comprise an Azure subscription, how do we manage this? How do we make sure that we have the necessary components set up the way that work? Now, we went through a quick show of hands. There's a range of between managed service providers, medium to large organizations, and small organizations in this room. So, what we're going to go through is the business and technical delineation of administration. We're going to talk about role-based administration control and accounts. We're going to go through some portals, talk about how to manage your subscription, Power BI, billing, tagging, rate card, and spend management. Right, let's get stuck into it. So, we've talked about the number of ways that you can purchase Azure subscription. So in the pay-as-you-go model, i.e. directly with Microsoft, what you basically have is an administrator and one subscription. And this is what we talked about before. For all the people in the room that said, yeah, we've done a trial, that's where behind Azure is Azure Active Directory, which automatically creates and provisions accounts. And we'll talk about a little bit more of that in a moment. But the key thing here is, as an account, as a co-administrator, this is where your typical administration, where you go to portal.azure.com, that wonderful URL that's ingrained in your mind /bookmark, that you automatically go to, log in, provision, run virtual machines, SQL service, all that fantastic stuff. However, that's really the technical focus, the technical boundary of the components and the mechanics. But the person who owns the subscription, now it might be the same person, the person who owns the subscription is really concerned about what is it really costing me? What resources is this co-administrator provisioning with potentially no control? And we'll talk about rate controls and that sort of thing. Again, a little bit of a spoiler alert. So, as we can see here, the delineation between technical below the red line and a pure business financial billing focus above the line. Now, oops, back one. So, there is no harm in having, as a co-administrator, to create multiple subscriptions and manage those accordingly. Now, if we then switch from change context just slightly and move from a pay-as-you-go to an enterprise subscription, this is where things get a little bit more complicated. As we all know, it's a case of, all right, so we've identified that the co-administrator will do multiple subscriptions, but when the account owner needs to say, right, well, who's the department owner? Now, this is where the confusion sets in, because people automatically think, situation one, I'm a small organization. I have 50 people in my organization. I only have one department. Do I need to create a department? Do I need to have, an enterprise administrator and a department owner and set departments? And the short answer is no. However, you can, because, and we'll talk about that in a moment. I know this is like, Gino, you're saying all these things. Where's it all? It will come together, trust me. So, the ability to have multiple departments, and more importantly, how one subscription feeds up into an enterprise enrollment. And the enterprise enrollment, and for those people in the room who put their hands up who has an enterprise agreement, will know that that's where you can create multiple subscriptions and then delegate those out. and those are pretty much at the department level.
So a few things I might just highlight that as we're going through here is when you create a subscription initially, you have an owner, and that owner is tied to the subscription. We need to have an owner for every subscription so that a subscription is never orphaned. Yeah? So when Microsoft goes and set up the scaffolding to have a subscription, we need to make sure that a subscription is never orphaned, because we need to, bill somebody, first of all. We need to obviously make sure we can call somebody, update you, notify you, what have you. And so a subscription can never have a blank owner, or an owner that's not there. So you can change the owner, but you can't leave it blank. So as it turns out, oftentimes people, and I see customers where they create subscriptions with one person, and they're the first person to do it, or the first person to create a few, and then they leave the company and that owner is still there. It's important, again, as you go start to do these things, to look at that stuff. So you can create a generic account that might be appropriate for that. Again, changing it doesn't take a lot of effort, but it's something that you should think about doing, right? That's kind of important. And then it's the owner that then starts that whole process for having role-based access control and co-administrators, and that's kind of that person, yeah?
Thank you. Okay, so moving right along. So as you can appreciate, we've talked about a number of portals. So, quick show of hands. Who thinks there's one Azure portal? Who thinks there's two Azure portals? Who thinks there's 3 Azure portals? Who thinks there's 4 Azure portals? Who thinks there's 5 Azure portals? All right, put you out of your misery. There are 4. So there's the EA Azure.com administrative portal, the one we know and love, okay? The one we all love, right? Because it's all now in the new portal. The old legacy portal has now been deprecated. To the best of my knowledge, Reid, correct? I don't think there's the old portal, and I don't think there's anything that you mandate in the old portal anymore.
No.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so another portal is the account portal. Who here knew about the account portal? Right, good show of hands. So this is the one where you go and edit your subscription details. We will show you this portal for those people that haven't seen it. And of course, enroll in or enable preview features, all right? So the other one is the management portal. This is the one we all know and love as well. This is the one where we go in and we don't give our developers full keys to the kingdom as a co-administrator to portal.azure.com. And of course, the last one for the people that are managed services, the CSP, Cloud Services, Cloud Solution Provider Portal. Right, so this is the one, think of it like the superset portal, right? But you need to be a CSP partner, okay? And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So, all right. Yep, by all means. Both.
Yeah.
Because they, changed.
Yeah, we've changed it. So you can go to either URL.
Yes, and the reason that is the legacy portal transition over to the new portal, and they just redirect. Okay, good question. Right, so when we go to Azure.com, I know we've all seen this before. When you go to Azure.com and click, yes, I want Azure, this is the very first screen you see. You do not see this. I put this in here to show you what that screen is. Then based on here, when you click on the click here, getting started, you then get the, okay, need to go and create an account. Now, of course, we've all seen this screen. You probably see it on a daily basis, if not 20, 25 times a day, because you're always logging in to do that. Okay, so we've seen this. And of course, it then asks you, okay, you need a Microsoft account. Now, who here, and I did this the very first time I go, work account? School account? What do we do here? Right. So the key thing here is the very first time you set up an Azure subscription, you need a Microsoft account. Why? Because there is no definition or association of your Azure subscription to your company, Gino Corporation. So it says, right, you need a Microsoft account. So you then need to go over it, either Live ID or Hotmail or Outlook.com, go and create an account and use that. But it's only for the initial definition. This is where a lot of people get confused because then they say, well, what do I do with that? Well, guess what? You can then go to the accounts portal, go in and then change it. We will show you this when we do our demo, okay?
When you're logging in, one of the tips that I always use is use in private browsing because otherwise your cache credentials, it kind of gets confused. So it's oftentimes a good idea. Either that or use some other alternative browser. I'm not going to say the name. Your alternative ones.
Edge or IE 11. There you go.
But the
both are different.
Yeah.
There you go. Alternative browser.
But I open up almost all my tabs, and I'm a massive tab person.
Yeah.
In private browsing is your friend because otherwise it starts to log you in with a set of credentials that you don't want to particularly use, especially if you have multiple accounts. Cool.
Okay, thank you. Very good tip. So, enough talk. Let's go and look at the portal. That's where we're going to switch over, and Reed is going to
Fantastic.
move forward.
So I've logged in here. I've got a demo account portal. So I've basically logged into what most customers who have an enterprise agreement would eventually get access to, which is called your ea.azure.com portal. And when you get into here,
sorry, just quick show of hands. Who here has seen this screen?
Fantastic.
Good. That's good.
How many people know how to drive all the details in this screen? Yeah,
that was my next
exactly.
question. That was my next question. Right.
So a lot of people, again, sort of go in to create a subscription and they dive into the technical side of things. And then what happens is, then they come back and say to us, well, we've got this subscription sprawl, we've got a few things, and we don't know how we've got there. Can we actually go back and then revisit this? The other thing as well is that people move from company to company, and they, somebody from that other cloud provider might come in and they say, now we've got these Azure things. How do we look at that? And so again, this is the business management side of stuff.
So just real quick one. So if you cast your mind back to that slide with the red line, this is above the line. This is the business billing financial management side.
Absolutely. So when you look at yours, first of all, you're going to see at the top up here, up there, the actual, there is no, in mine, an actual number. Why? Because I didn't want you guys to go and start to hack at it. No. It's an internal portal that we use for demoing, but you will see your enrollment number right under here, and that enrollment number will help you out with getting connected for Power BI and some of the other things we're going to do.
And that will be an 8, 10-digit number. It'll be a digit number.
Yeah. And so when you're looking at your enrollment here, first of all, you'll be able to obviously see your company, the country that you're in. This is the country for your billing. Mixed account level here. And so oftentimes, again, if you're using a work or a Microsoft account,
click on it.
Yep.
Now, remember how we touched on work, Microsoft account? This is where you get to choose whether you have both, just work accounts or just Microsoft accounts. Now, why is this important? So, as you can appreciate, I work across a number of companies in different verticals: government, insurance, finance, manufacturing, chemical, pharmaceutical, education. One specific customer turned around and said, oh, perfect, I want no more Microsoft accounts. Everyone must have a work account. I go, fine, we can do that. However, there's some gotchas, and we'll talk about those in a moment. But this is the area where you can say, who can I permit to consume from a resource point of view to create subscriptions? This is where you get to choose. It is not a set once and it's set in stone. You can come back and change it later.
Absolutely. So normally when people start off, they start off with a Microsoft account because you haven't federated your Active Directory with Azure Active Directory. It's quite often, unless you've had Office 365 or you've done a few things like that. You end up having as well then the start and end dates. Important. Again, customers oftentimes ask me, well, when is my agreement kind of finished? Having said that, these things will continue to roll over. What happens is that your pricing plan that you've signed up to for a term will then roll into a updated pricing plan after this date. And so, we lock in your pricing, and I'll show you that in a little bit, for a particular period of time that allows you to get the best price of either what you've agreed to or lower in the market if it's already available for the general people. Billing code is quarterly. Quite often, customers who just start will get annual billing. And once they go over a certain amount of their pre-commit, then we'll move into quarterly billing. And this is really a bit about how much credit Microsoft gives you until we start to say, hold on a second here, we need to actually start to collect money from you. Yeah? And how often that does. Obviously, your status Pro Direct, meaning you actually have a support level. Quite often, people in here will have none or some, depending on the level that you've purchased. Again, support range. Azure Marketplace. It's important when you get into this that I would generally enable the Azure Marketplace. It allows you to actually deploy stuff from the marketplace that aren't that have more than just free, which is important. So let's say you want to deploy a Red Hat Linux environment or something else that we get charged for.
Power BI Professional.
Yeah, we get actually on-charge you for that. Department administrators, so if you do have department administrators, and department administrators are really great for larger organizations, you can enable that as well. I also recommend at least one department for every organization, because we'll show you in a moment here how that ties in. And then the account owner, again, can view the charges. Typically, that's a good thing. I typically really believe that customers should show some of their employees what the costs are so they can make an intelligent decision. Microsoft Partner Identity if it's applicable. And then, of course, down here, if you're a commercial account, you'll see Azure Commercial terms or Azure Public Sector terms, which is slightly different than the way you sign. On the right-hand side here, you have your administrators at a whole. So everybody in this list at the top here, and you can see in our demo account, there's a lot of them. You can see a number of people. Those are people that will get informed and get notified of all of the stuff below that when you create a subscription or when the notifications come out. And then if you want people, they can also create subscriptions and have you. Notification contacts, these are people, if you want to, which actually just get notified. So maybe you want somebody to just receive the reports or get notified of some events or alerts.
So one of the things, big tip I like to do here for notification, everyone has a service desk ticketing system. So if you have service desk at companyname.com.au, that would be the place to put it in. Now, why would that be a good idea? Because anytime something gets changed, the ticket's automatically raised. Now, what you do with that ticket is another conversation, but at least you have a record of something has been changed. So that's a good, and making it a service account rather than a, first name dot last name at company name. It's like when that person leaves, then all of a sudden that account, stops working.
So when you look at add an administrator, you can say what type of account it is, notification contact, and you can also have this interesting thing here called read-only. So we oftentimes find that somebody who might be a reporting person or somebody who is going to look at the financial aspects, not going to go and do technical things, might become a read-only administrator. And that's an important area. So just because they're in the administrative list doesn't necessarily mean there are administrators. They could be a read-only administrator. You notice that that this main portal has two menus from at the top, from left to right, and then from top to bottom here. So I'm going to quickly just go in and show you the departments. And so the departments here, and this is, again, a portal for demonstrating. So we actually have a number of departments. We're going to talk in a little bit about what the right number is for you, But look at this one here, hosting, $50,000. $50,000 of credit. So as a large organization, you can buy credits from Microsoft for your Azure enrollment, and those credits then can be allocated for various departments. That allocation is a soft allocation, but having said that, you can actually go in here at the department level, click on the little pencil, and you can put in here your quota. If you have that department level in there, then you can automatically get notified at a very coarse level. So it's great for your COO, your billing, your financial controllers to get, hey, have I spent 50% of what I've allocated? Have I spent 75, 90, or 100%? And if they are in the notifications contacts in the last screen or at this level, they will actually get notified that, hey, you've spent half your credit. Are we halfway through the fiscal year? Are we halfway through our term? Great. That's what we expect. If we're not, maybe we should do some further investigation. Again, you can go and have multiple departments as you like. And again, quite often customers that are international might split this up by country. Yeah, let's say there's a general manager for Australia, a general manager for New Zealand, another one for another country. Maybe they have different financial controls. The accounts here are, again, the accounts. Let me just go back and look at all departments here. These accounts are the accounts that are actually set up or used for those subscriptions and become account owners. So you can actually do this. Why would you have different accounts? Because you end up having a third party that might want to have access, or you might want to have a company that you're providing resources to, and you give them access to that. And so this is, again, let's say a manager that comes in wants that high-level access. And then at the subscription level, you can then start to see, let me just go back in all departments, and you can see from here, again, all of the various subscriptions that you have. And so this subscriptions, each one of these is that boundary for your separation of information. You can go in here and set up a cost center, and all these things flow out in the various reports that you have. Yeah. So from that perspective, were we going to show the reporting?
Not yet.
Okay.
We will, but not yet.
We're going to that.
So the last thing I just want to talk about here on the subscription pane, this is really, again, going back to that diagram, this is below the line. So this is where you would go and say, right, Reed, as a developer, I'm going to go and create you a subscription and give you full authority to that subscription. And because I want to make sure that he doesn't go over, I'm going to define a spending limit of $1,000 and be notified when that goes the notification percentages that we touched on before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go back.
Let's go back. Yep. All right. So we've had a quick walk through all the portals. Now, some of the things that you'll find is when you start looking at how they all fit together, there's obviously a whole bunch of subscription limits. So number one, cost. No, I'm not going to go through all of these, right? You'll get a copy of these slides. But more importantly, these subscription limits are changing on a regular basis. So please go to that link on a regular basis to have a look, right? So there's a whole bunch of things in there about, what you can put in, what you can't put in, and things of that nature. Okay? Right.
And the URL right here in the bottom
Yep.
is probably the best place to go when you're looking at this, because I was actually talking with another organization just this week about this. These limits get updated as we update our capabilities, and probably worthwhile as you're going through this process. Unless you're really, really big, it's unlikely you will hit a technical limit that we have. Most customers in Australia that I see could fit reasonably in a single subscription or a few subscriptions.
Okay. So as you can appreciate, we've now talked about all these components and how does all this fit together. So what we're going to, why is the subscription, why is that slide blank?
Well, that's right, because we were going to draw out some architectures.
Of course, because we are not all working for the same company. We all have different goals, different metrics, and different objectives. So when we're putting this content together, we said, right, we now need to put an Azure subscription architecture. What does the reference architecture look like? And we went, are you small, medium, or large? Are you centralized? Are you decentralized? Do you work with partner companies? Are you a managed service provider? Do you want to delegate control? Do you not want to delegate control? How much control do you want to delegate? So we kept going round and round in circles and realized the best way to do this is let's start with a blank sheet of paper and interactively ask the questions, okay, we obviously need one subscription, which we need a co-administrator, and so we can start defining resources and put in a monthly spend. Great. But what's the next step from that? Okay, so if we then start with, as Reed draws this up, if we then start with a co-administrator, typically, if we start small, then the co-administrator also becomes the billing administrator, which also becomes a notification person, right? However, when we start scaling this up to say, right, is the administrator wanting to do development in their own world? And the answer is no. So now we need to define another administrator so that we can grant a subscription to for their development. And that's where he's drawn on the right-hand side.
Yeah, so a quick and easy thing I get asked a lot of questions is, how many subscriptions should people have? And the short answer to that is as few as possible, but as many as you need. How long is this piece of string? Peter, how long is the piece of string?
It's
always that long. That's because your arms are that. And for me,
exactly.
Absolutely.
It's longer.
I'm the shortest guy in the room, probably. Maybe Gino and I are, no, Daniel, you're, maybe. But the point is this, is how many subscriptions is enough? When you're looking at the number of subscriptions, there are a lot of customers that say, hey, 2 subscriptions is enough, 3 subscriptions is enough. It also depends on how you want to work with it. Interestingly enough, there are a lot of technical things that people go through overly, and then there are boundaries associated with things like third parties. Let's say you have an outsourcer. I know there's probably a few in the room. Yeah? And that outsourcer basically says, I want control over everything in that square box. This is kind of all of my area. And then this is for the customer, right? Or you might end up having another box over here, which is an application vendor, an app vendor. So I've had a bunch of customers that say, hey, I want to have access from this subscription into that subscription. All these things are technically possible, but in each one of those subscriptions, there's going to be a person here, That person or that account or the person who runs that account owner, has control of the data that goes inside that boundary. So let's just call this app vendor Gino Corp. Gino, is that right? Gino Corp?
And we like Gino Corp because Gino Corp has some of the best developers on the platform.
However, if I, over here as customer Reed, contract to Gino Corp to get that service, that application, I give all of my data to Gino Corp because guess what? He's using my work, what have you, and Gino Corp goes bankrupt. Can I, as a Reed customer, get access to that data? No. He's got a contract with Microsoft. Hold on a second here. How do I do that? Well, there's a court process, legal, I do that process. But Microsoft actually, he has a contract with Microsoft. If he can't pay the Microsoft bill, let's say 2, 3, 4 months, however long that happens, guess what? That data is gone. So how do you protect against that?
What if that
Question.
subscription was part of your EA?
Hold on a second, correct. So then,
Good question.
instead of having this belong to Gino Corp, you attach this to your EA, and you then take Gino and you give him access. Then that's your subscription.
And then you own the keys to the kingdom. And then when Gino Corporation, for whatever reason, the relationship is no longer viable or tenable, you
just take it over. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or how about this? If you don't want that, you can actually then take this and back this up and copy the data into another subscription, which is another thing. Say you only care about the data, but you still want Gino Corp to have full control. So then you put this over here into your own data and you make a copy of it. And there's a bunch of ways of doing that. One of them is really easy, ASR it, using Azure Site Recovery. Or how about you use Azure Backup? Yeah, there are a whole pile of other sessions in this conference to talk about those things and online. But understanding that the subscription boundary, there is a relationship between the owner of that subscription and who has control of it, a legal hold on that data. Make sense? So again, I've got customers that ask me, I have a small vendor I really like this small vendor, but I'm nervous of them because I don't know what their financial stability is. I don't know how they're going to act, whatever the case may be. Can they just come and use my subscription and access that? And the answer is yes, because that's what they do with a resource, and you use this great thing, you guys are always using it, called RBAC. And you give them subscription rights down into your subscription, but you still own the keys to the main subscription. Yeah? Can you merge subscriptions? And the answer is no. So if I have a virtual machine here, and I want to take and move that virtual machine, what happens? I have a network, I have some stuff. I've got to do technical things to match that up. So moving resources between subscriptions is a little bit more complicated because you're doing things technically. The best way to describe it is if you have two Hyper-V clusters or you have two physical hosts and you're going to move them and you're going to re-IP them and stuff of that nature, while the formats are compatible, there's still some configuration changes. However, if I go and create 3 subscriptions and I have this as still as Geno Corp's here, I can then go and take and move this under my EA. Yeah? So I can transfer subscription ownership very quickly. That's literally a support call or an online thing. As long as Geno and I agree, and Geno says, yes, take this subscription from me, I can take over that. I transfer the owner of that to me, and then I'm responsible for paying.
So for those customers in the room not managed, non-CSPs, that's a great scenario whereby if you're acquiring a company or divesting a company.
100%.
Okay.
So these are...
Can you bring an open modem subscription from another country to EA in Australia?
The answer is yes, because the agreement is not associated, and where the subscription is, it doesn't matter where the resources are located. Yeah.
Okay.
Can VMs talk between subscriptions? Yes.
Yes, and we've got a little bit on that.
There's a lot
as
of
well.
stuff on VNet peering and other, absolutely.
We need to. All right, now, whoops, hang on, before we get to that. So, as you can appreciate, there is no easy answer. Depending on your organization, your structure, and a whole bunch of other questions, some of which we are going to answer quite cleanly towards the end. One of the things that both Reed and myself, and we dialogue very, very frequently, is we've come up with 2 types of architectures of what a subscription would look like. Now, there's no right or wrong answer, but we think if you have a subscription by application, what this allows you to do is, obviously in this example, you have an enterprise agreement, you have a number of accounts, and what you can then do is have defined application 1, typically a line of business application, whereby you can have a development, staging, and production environment and move between those. Now, why would you want to do a subscription architecture by application? Well, you might have business units that have significant investments, and that's the way they want to control the billing and the cost management. This is one way. This is not the only way. There is a session on Thursday morning by Bala, gain insights into real-world usage of Microsoft Cloud using Azure Express Route. I'll talk about that because we've already touched on this. Connecting Azure subscriptions, there is a maximum of 10 Express Route connects to a maximum of 10 subscriptions. Express Route Premium has more. Don't know if you guys know that, but that's up there. All right. Now, so we've talked about subscription by application. Another one is subscription by resource group. So, who here knows about resource groups? Who here is using resource groups? Right, good, that's good to see. So in this example, what we're seeing here is, again, multiple applications, but this is where application 1 is all of these applications are under the one subscription, but they're defined, their boundary is by resource group. And what we can then do, and we're going to show you this in a moment, is having the ability to delineate between the traditional environments that your application, your line of business application will move from development, staging, and into production. Okay, so As you can appreciate, we are now going to go through, we're not going to be able to do this, but you have a copy of this slide that there's a number of items you need to consider as part of defining, architecting, and administering your subscription. So, the management approach. So, centralized, decentralized. Is it one team? Is it multiple teams? Security requirements. Everyone here has to relate and work under either internal security guidelines, external security guidelines, industry security guidelines. Connectivity requirements. Where are you going to put your resources? We are very fortunate here in Australia that we have 2 Azure regions. What is it? Australia Southeast and Australia East, aka Sydney and Melbourne. Yes, we're in the Gold Coast. But connectivity, how are you going to get in and out of that? Really quick tangent. Just on Monday, I was having a conversation with a customer and they said, oh, we've got this challenge and we need to restore 100 terabytes, and that's another conversation. We're concerned that Azure's not going to be quick enough. And I'm like going, well, you could use ExpressRoute, you could do hybrid, and you could do this. That's one way to solve the problem. So, continuing on, application requirements. How is your application going to be architected? That in itself is a completely different conversation. Vendor strategy. Vendor strategy from the point of view of putting all your eggs in one basket or hedging your bets and putting stuff private, hybrid, or a combination thereof. Procurement. Where are you actually going to procure your Azure subscription from? For those people in the room that put their hand up as managed service providers, it's pretty much a done deal, right? You guys have the subscriptions and you can hand them out as you either bring customers on, things of that nature. However, if you're an enterprise agreement customer, how are you going to delegate those subscriptions or hand out those subscriptions to someone in marketing, someone in finance? Probably not those people, but maybe your development, maybe another company like the Gino Corporation that wants to come in and do some work. The number of subscriptions, I think we've touched on that. As little as possible, but as many as needed. I know that doesn't give you a direct answer because you want that, it needs to be 3 or it needs to be 7. And of course, the last one we're going to touch a little bit on here, the integration and leveraging of Azure Active Directory. I'm going to keep going on from here. Right. So as you can appreciate, when we start defining resources within Azure, you need to have a reasonably good naming convention. What I'm going to cover here is a starting point. Now, so looking at defining what the type of resource is, and the naming convention should be as clear as possible, but without being totally verbose. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So, something to consider, that the resource names are unique across entire Azure subscription. They're constrained by length, and of course the special characters alphanumeric, and they cannot contain offensive or forbidden strings. Okay? Let's leave it at that. All right, so moving forward. Okay, let's just go forward with this. So, here is an example. Now, every time I show this, I do multiple workshops with customers and I show this and you go, oh, my goodness, that is not going to work in our environment. Okay, this is an example, right? There is a Microsoft Patterns and Practices article. There's a free PDF that you can actually download and have a look at that. I suggest you have a really good read of that. And it goes through some examples of how you can put in, for example, just switching to the next slide, the types of things that you need. So, I've already touched on some resources are constrained. They must be globally unique. Some resources are constrained by length. Some resources are constrained to alphanumeric. Some resources are unique within the subscription. And of course, some resource names must be lowercase characters. Again, I point you to the Microsoft Patterns and Practices for the details of that.
Sometimes called the Azure scaffolding document.
Which is the new terminology on that. So, what's the real crux of this? Here is, down the bottom, is an example of an Azure naming convention. And people go, oh my God, that's just, wow, that's not going to work in our environment. Okay, and that's fine, because this is an example. Okay, so what we're really talking about here is a set of codes. So who here has consistent server naming conventions? Show of hands. Right, nice. Everyone. This is no different. the delineation here is we're now just not talking about server names. We're talking about every possible potential resource within Azure and even the new stuff that's coming down the line that's currently in Azure Preview. So quickly from left to right. So having something like the company name, business unit, Azure resource type, the type of deployment, who owns it, whether it's production, non-production, and an ownership of the resource type and things of that nature. The goal here is to give you an idea of the bigger thinking to make sure that the naming convention you put in place is scalable and flexible enough that it doesn't become a burden later on. Real world example. So I had the thing that's like, okay, SQL1, who owns that? Is it production? Is it test? Right? It's just like, but it's SQL1. So we're not going to delete it. We're not going to touch it because it's SQL1, right? Now, that is an easy one, right? Because it's just like, don't touch it, right? Don't touch it. Right. Another real world example had a significant line of business application, and the person that used it used a PowerShell script to go and provision it. Big tick. He called it test 1. Is it production? Is it live? Who owns it? You know, is it geographically redundant? Is it something, it's called test 1, right? So we had to dig in a little bit deeper to go and find that out. We'll actually touch on that as well. So, changing gear. Now that we know the building blocks, now we know that you can put a subscription together by, for example, application or by resource group. Now we start looking at how do we start delegating control? Sorry, how do we start defining control? How do we start delegating access? So we're going to talk about Azure account types, which we've already touched on. We're going to talk about role-based administration, tags, resource groups, billing, naming conventions, and obviously Power BI. So now, how do I manage my Azure subscription? We've already touched on this, but I wanted to put this slide up because this is a really good reference slide. As you can appreciate, there's probably 3 golden slides here. This is one of them. Highly suggest you print it out, stick it on your board, laminate it, maybe present it at your weekly stand-up if you have such a thing. So we're going to talk about server roles, resource manager roles, account types, how to integrate, and I know I've touched on this, Azure Active Directory, looking at what's required to get it in. And of course, if you're a CSP, I know we've only touched on this, there's integration and additional capabilities that you need to be aware of. So, where are we now? Azure account types. We've talked about the delineation between what a school and a Microsoft account is. We can go forward from there. Now, I've also made the recommendation, try and avoid first name, last name in your notifications and use something generic, you know, especially for when you want to use notifications for billing and things of that nature. So, we get this asked a lot. How do I manage someone else's subscription? How do I manage someone else's subscription? And the answer is it depends on how your account type is set up. So, if you're acquiring one or divesting one, looking at the users and groups in the subscription, obviously leveraging Azure resource groups, which we're going to talk about in a moment, and of course, this thing. The management certificate. Who here knows about the Azure management certificate? Just a handful. Okay, so did you know that you're limited to 100 management subscriptions, 100 management certificates per subscriptions, right? Now, what that really means is as you start connecting other subscription and other things, you will run out. Fear not, service call, you can get it increased. Okay, now, next slide. So, role-based access control. What this slide is basically showing on your right-hand side is here is a snippet of the out-of-the-box roles. Highly recommend you use those and try and avoid, where possible, creating new roles. Not that you can't, but these roles are pretty good. So typically you're going to have, I need someone that has read access to my subscription. Auditors. I need someone that can go and create some stuff, some resources, but not everything. Someone in marketing. I need someone that has full access to do a high level of administration, maybe a service desk. There are roles in here all ready to go. So the other thing as well, there is from...
There was.
Sorry?
There was. It's already happened.
Yes.
But if you want to
Today-
learn more about identity,
Today at 1:45, there was another session. Highly recommend INF 324B. If you did go to it, unfortunately I couldn't. Talking about how to identity within Azure. I know I've said this, I will talk about Azure Active Directory, but not just yet. So, RBAC challenges. This is where I'm going to talk about it. And talk about transfers and talk about things. So, one of the key things with role-based administration is that the identity you need to provision. So, if you want Gino, start again. If I want Reed to be an owner of a subscription where he can run his entire development and leverage his MSDN subscription, his identity must be in Azure Active Directory. So, quick show of hands. Who here from a customer, from your environment, because I know there's managed service people in the room, who here has Active Directory connected to Azure Active Directory? Most of the room. Fantastic. Perfect. Right. So what that means then is you go into your on-premise domain controller, as an example, create an account, and automatically goes up to Azure Active Directory. Great. Then you can select it and add it into what we just touched on, the role-based groups that you need. Now, what if you don't have that account? So, quick change of context here. So, what if you want the Gino Corporation, a separate entity that doesn't have an Azure subscription, but you want to give them access to a subscription that you manage and bill? This is where you can either use extranet user accounts, Azure AD B2B, or Azure AD B2C. So, the common example here is, in the Gino Corporation, we have an on-premise domain controller, and we've connected it to your on-premise domain controller. And what we're going to do there is and that's what the B2B and B2C is, the bidirectional sync. And that's that in a nutshell. Where extranet users are is this is where you could get an export of my Active Directory, filter that out, and then import it into your Active Directory. That then gets synced to Azure Active Directory up in the cloud, because we all know the cloud's up in the cloud. And then you can define that user in role-based administration groups. Now, I know that's a bit complicated. You're going, hang on a sec, why didn't we just create one? Well, there could be a number of reasons. If you're only doing a handful of users, manually create it, and you'll have your OU structure on-premise. These are external people. Straightforward. But what if you're doing 1,000? What if you're doing 10,000? You probably want to script and automate that. Now, the downside of doing that, of going from an extranet, in other words, getting a list and then importing it in, what if those people leave? So then you still have that extra account defined in your Azure Active Directory that has those roles. So it's something to consider about. Okay? Right. Moving on. Resource tags. Resource tags are named value pairs assigned to resources or resource groups. This is one of those awesome capabilities that's going to help you with your billing. So who here knows or has implemented resource tags? Excellent. And obviously when you start looking at your financial bill, you can then see this is the type of stuff that will allow you to see, for example, who the owner, who the department, who the environment is it dev test? If you have, the classic example I use is if you have internal billing codes, right? It's a classic example of that. Now, resource tags are enterprise-wide, and each resource can have up to 15 tags, and we will show that in just a moment. So, not only the screen here, but also live as well, knowing that we're pretty close on time. So,
let's just show it.
Let's just show it. Let's just show it. There we go.
Fantastic. So I've logged into a quick Azure portal. Everyone's seen this. A couple of interesting things. First of all, you can go down to here, more services, and I can actually show, if I could click, my apologies, let's go back to this. And if I scroll down here to the very bottom, my mouse, I can actually go down here and sort by tags. If no one has seen that, I want to see all the tags in my environment. And this allows me to actually go and filter. So tags are both used for billing and information, but also seeing here. Now I can look at here and say, what are the resources I have that have been tagged by Area Gold Coast? Now I have taken this resource, it's a resource group, and I've tagged it a few times with different stuff. So I can look at that. I can go and highlight that resource group or resource, and then I can go and look at the tags on it, and I can actually see that it's got 3 tags. It's got a tag called area, it's got one called ignite, and it's got one called room. And I can actually then, if I want to pull down the key value pair, I can actually add a new one here, and I say, great session. Sure.
Now, quick tip. When I first used this, I went in and did. And for the recording, that's fat finger typing. There is no spell checking here. So if you spell department and D-P-A-R-T-M-E-N-T, then you'll get 2.
Absolutely.
So then when you do your resource accounting and you look at the Excel spreadsheet, which we'll show you in a moment, not the example, but then you'll get 2 words department. And if you put the billing code in wrong, right, then you need, so the big tip here is
be consistent.
Be consistent and just make sure.
Absolutely. Also, just point out that the resource groups, if you tag a resource group, it does not automatically inherit down to the resources. So as you're doing some of your reporting, you should also filter by both resource group and tag, and you'll actually get both of them when you show up. Did you have? Absolutely. So we don't automatically inherit those, otherwise we'd have to have a bunch of work behind the scenes.
So
you use your queries to do that appropriately. Nope. Sorry. You can go back and do some PowerShell if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But my suggestion is not to go super wild with tagging, but use that around resource groups as the primary mechanism. And if you want to use it around specific resources, then do that within reason. You don't want to tag every disk or every NIC card or every other kind of bits and stuff. Yeah?
And it's ironic you mentioned that, because I had a customer exactly that, and they're going, I've run out of tags. I go, what do you mean you run out of tags? He goes, what did you tag? We tagged everything. Right? We tagged everything. So think of a tag, in the infamous SQL database where you have an index, right? You use your indexes sparingly. You use tags and define tags sparingly. And again, it's in the same clementia as your naming standards. You're going to be sort of consistent and controlled about how big your naming convention is, right? You may only have 2 or 3 fields, right? And it's 8 to 10 characters long. Perfect. Same thing with tags.
So just to change the order slightly, I'm going to go in and show you the other portal here, and then that saves us.
Yes.
And then we'll jump into the last demo of the session. So back to the ea.azure.com portal, you can actually go and look at your usage summary. This is great. You can go down through here and look at the various billing components. These are all done, if you will, by service names, instances. Real quickly, just to match up, just because we like to advertise, as an example, an A1 virtual machine per hour on our public website, we actually have a different unit of measurement. And so sometimes when you're looking at this, you see we've consumed 8.7433 hours times 100 in this case. And so that's 874 hours, 0.33 of that resource. And that kind of what matches out. So the unit price here, even though it's $5.76 for 100 hours, so it's 5 cents an hour. Just be aware of that. So when you're looking at this, our metering behind the scenes is slightly different when you're looking at your bill. Real quickly, you can go and download your usage. And so if you look at this, I won't go ahead and do this, but you can see your usage. So your balance and charges, which is a high-level summary, your usage detail, and I'll show you a spreadsheet in a moment, and your price sheet. So people oftentimes ask me, what price do I actually pay? That is your price sheet that we match up your usage to your rate and do that. I'll just show you real quickly. You can download through here an advanced report for download, and that's, again, just a little bit more information. I'll show you in a second. And you also see here, which Jano has a screenshot of, your actual key for accessing that. So we've opened up all of our billing data so that you can actually import that into Power BI, and Gina will show you that momentarily. I just want to show you two last things, and that is on the price sheet page. Oftentimes customers will ask, hey, what did I get charged? As I said before, when you sign an enterprise agreement or an agreement with Microsoft, we protect your price for the life of that agreement, and we commit that your price will never go higher than that, but you'll get potentially lower. And so you're going to see here in a moment when it comes up, I'll be able to hover over a bubble and you'll see that.
There we go.
So here you can actually go and see, and you'll end up with two rates. In my case, because it's a demo account, the current rate is not available, but the baseline rate is the rate that you've contracted to. The current rate most oftentimes will be lower because Azure prices are dropping. And as that happens, you'll see that rate and you'll pay the lower of the two. Lastly, just to show you those downloads, this here is an example of what your bill looks like when you do that download. And then this is great. You can run a pivot table on this. The other aspect of this is that you can actually go and get an extended bill. And this here is all of the various, this is an example of one that somebody's given me, but you can actually go and see across here, I've highlighted the top column, all of these things, and there's this one field under column Z which has all of the tags. And these tags here actually are based on the various tags that happen, but you also have other areas here like the resource location, the extended cost, the consumed amount, and other areas. So as you go through this process, you then go into what Gina will show you how to look at this more properly.
So as you can appreciate, once you've downloaded that Excel spreadsheet, I'm not a big fan of spreadsheets. And who here loves doing pivot tables? Hands up. So as you can appreciate, which is probably the prime reason that you guys came here, as well as understanding Azure subscription, how can you really understand your subscription, the consumption, the billing, and the information in a manner that is easy to consume? So this is what I'm going to briefly talk about is Power BI. So in a nutshell, Power BI is the graphical visualization of your Azure subscription plus additional capabilities. Now, so you can read this. So what I'm going to show here is using Power BI through a browser. There is a desktop version, and that desktop version gives you tremendous amount of power. Even the ability, I just want to quickly touch on this, even the ability to control where the data sits on any mobile device. That means you can get Azure billing information, graphs, charts, and lists on your phone from wherever you are and go, yep, absolutely great, that's good. Or it's not good, so then you can go back and address it, okay? So, Power BI in a nutshell. So, more information, powerbi.microsoft.com. And as you all probably know, hopefully you know that with every Office 365 subscription, there is a free Power BI, and there's an independent Power BI that you can get directly through the web. So, we've already touched on, in order to get this going, there's a number of moving parts. So I've already pre-staged one under the context of, here's one we prepared earlier. And one of the key things you need is a API access key. So what we're going to do is switch over. No, we're going to, what happened there? Duplicate, I think we need to do, sorry. Right, so what I'm going to show you here is, yep, good. Now, is this guy. So I am using Power BI from my Office 365. There you go, you can see there. So what I'm going to do is click on the Power BI icon. Now, what that happens is I've already got an account, and it's already created, and I've already put in. So this is going to a live customer site, which means please do not take a photo. All right, so what I want to show you here, as you can see, all right, so the first question I get asked is, Gino, great, lovely pictures, how did you get there? Okay, step one, get into Power BI. Step two, down at the bottom, is under data sets, click on add. And what happens here is, so this is the screen you will get. There's no smokes and mirrors behind here. So we click on Services, and from Services, it brings you into the Azure Marketplace. What we're looking for here, we just simply type in Azure and press Search. What we will see down here is the Azure Enterprise add-in for Power BI. Now, what this allows you to do, as you can see, when you say get it now, I will go through the wizard, but I'm not going to complete it because I don't have the account information. But as you can see here, remember we touched on right at the beginning, or towards the early, what is the enrollment number? What is the Azure environment URL? That would be https://ea.azure.com. What is the number of months that you want to work with?
Put in 36.
3 years is good because most people in this room, correct me if I'm wrong, most people have an enterprise agreement in some way, shape or form. So, and then the next thing you'll need is the account key, and that is the API access key, that big monster thing. Now, if you did take a photo of either mine or of Reed's, no big deal. I can actually go in, now that we know, at the accounts.azure.com to go in and revoke that key and generate a new one. And if you do that, you then need to go into all your other applications, specifically Power BI, and put that key in, and then your reports start working. So, perfect, thank you for that. So what I want you to do, if you can...
Come over and drive.
Yeah, go over drive. So, just go, dashboards, IT spend, just to quickly... All right, so this obviously isn't an Azure subscription. The whole reason I want to show this for the next 15 seconds is different types of graphs that you can create and pin to your dashboard. And of course, if this was a mobile device, it would be rendered appropriately. And I'm talking about Windows, Android, iOS, and including iPads. So, in this example, what I'm going to do is, what is my biggest spend amount?
Or by item.
Yep, the one I was going to do was even more simple. That's all right. Cheat sheet, cost category. Okay, so exit QA, and I'm just going to go cost category, and I'm going to spell it right, EGORY, and press enter. Now, why is that important? So one of the common, and of course you can order this, just to give you a taste of what's possible, and very quickly of all of that Excel spreadsheet. Don't have to do Excel, don't have to do pivot tables, don't have to do all that extra stuff. Very quickly, you now get the capability of seeing, right, it's really obvious. In this thing, I have a ton of virtual machines and a ton of recovery services, which obviously produces a ton of storage. Now, at a high level question, do I really need all of that? Now, I can then drill into it and get some more answers. So, again, we're just touching on what is possible. So the last couple of things we're just going to cover through. Sorry, press the wrong button. Press the wrong button. Right. The last thing we're going to cover. So that gives you an idea of what's possible. So Power BI, free from the browser, on your mobile device. You can download it to your desktop, which is Windows. And so we've covered account types, role-based administration, tags, resource groups, billing, naming conventions, and Power BI. So, tips and resources. So, we know that defining your Azure subscription will depend on a number of factors. Some of those factors include getting your stakeholders in the business involved as early as possible. Some people may need to be involved for financial billing. Other people's may not. The other thing we know that depending on the number of subscriptions dictates the simplicity or the granularity that you need. Of course, we've talked about the identity, where your identity needs to live, and hopefully you understand that having your identity connected and federated to Azure Active Directory will give you those features of, for example, role-based administration. Having at least one enterprise administrator within your subscriptions, making sure that you can not only scale, but also having the security and identity that goes with that. Now, Some key learnings, again, this is probably, as I touched, this is probably the third golden slide. Understanding,
Oh, sorry.
oh. Understanding what type of accounts you want, whether you want both or just work accounts. Using resource groups and not creating multiple subscriptions as your administrative item. Managing access through Active Directory groups, ideally identities provisioned and available within Azure Active Directory, so you can then have role-based administration. Enabling multi-factor authentication to truly validate that the person connecting to your Azure subscription, which is probably not in your building, to make sure that they are trusted. Making sure that the least privilege through role-based administration, only giving the people access to the resources that they need. And last but not least, keep a tab on changes. We talked about how you can set up a notification account, and one of my big tips is using a service desk account, so anytime there's a change for notification. Right, moving on. I think we've pretty much covered that. And I think we're at the end. Please fill out your evaluation. We'll be here towards the end to answer any questions. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.